Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us this evening. This is John McDougall. I am the event coordinator here at Murder by the Book in Houston. And before we get started this evening, I'm going to make just a couple of quick store announcement stuff while we are waiting for everybody to get the notification that we've gone live. We are still waiting for Esme Addison to pop in, so we're going to get started once I'm done with announcements, and we will add her in. Hopefully she'll pop in while I'm doing introductions. That's usually what happens. So as I mentioned, I am the event coordinator here at Murder by the Book in Houston. I am also the resident cozy reader for the store, so I'm super excited about tonight's event. As I said before we get started, a couple quick announcements. We are open, so if you haven't been in for a while, please come visit us. We reopened back in October for browsing, no appointment needed. We're still encouraging masks, but we have lifted the capacity requirement in the store. We were eliminating to 6 people. At the moment, we are not. We are also excited. We do have some, there's Esme, she just popped in. So we also just added some in-store events to the calendar for September. One of the most asked questions we've been asked is when will things get back to normal with events? So we're not at normal yet. So even though we have some stuff on the books, don't expect kind of a full event calendar, but we're super excited to have some people on the books. We are going to kick it off with Miranda James, who is also known to us as Dean. He was the store manager at the store for many, many years. So he's going to kick us off on September 4th with our first in-store event. We're really excited to be able to doing in-store stuff again and having him be our first person. A lot of publishers aren't sending people out on the road just yet, so the things that we've mostly set up have been with authors. So like I said, don't expect kind of a full event calendar just yet, but we're just happy to have anything on the books for now. I know a lot of people have also been worried that once we start doing in-store stuff, we will have abandoned the virtual events. That is definitely not the case. We have so many cozy events coming up. I'll mention them again later, but just real quick, like I said, we've got Miranda James. We'll be doing, he's in store. We'll be doing a virtual event with Victoria Laurie in August. Hannah Dennison also in August. We'll be doing a big panel with Lucy Burdett, Ellen Byron, Jennifer Chow, Deborah Goldstein, and Libby Klein in August, and we'll have some more that I'll mention at the end of the event. Also, if you are cozy readers, I hope that you will check out our subscription service. We have 3 different options. They're called Murder by the Box. One of the options is a cozy of the month. So if you would like to find out what my favorite cozy of the month is, you can sign up for that. I'm dropping links in the chat, so you'll be able to register for that. Basically what it is I pick out kind of my favorite first in series in the month, and we send it to you with a little note explaining why I loved it and some read-alike recommendations as well. So I hope you will check that out. You can either check it out on the Murder by the Book website or murderbythebox.com. But tonight we're so excited to have S.C. Perkins, Esme Addison, and Sherry Harris with us. So I'm going to bring them on one at a time and get them introduced. I am going to start with S.C. Perkins. How are you tonight, Stephanie? Oh, did I?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. It's good to see you.
Happy great to see you. Thank you so much. It's been great.
So I also wanted to mention before we get started, if you guys have not ordered copies of Fatal Family Ties, which is the 3rd book in Stephanie's series, she is going to be dropping by the store for us on Saturday, and she's going to be signing copies. So if you don't have it, or if you don't have, we have paperbacks of the first 2 in the series in stock as well. So if you want a signed set, you can order those at murderbooks.com. I've also dropped a link in the chat for that. So to get you officially introduced, S.C. Perkins is a 5th-generation Texan who grew up hearing fascinating stories of her ancestry and eating lots of great Tex-Mex. Her first book, Murder Once Removed, was the winner of the 2017 Malice Best First Traditional Mystery Competition and an Agatha Award nominee. She resides in Houston, and when she's not working or writing at her day job, she's likely outside in the sun, on the beach, or riding horses. So if you guys have checked out our virtual events before, Stephanie actually, like as we mentioned, lives in town and is a regular face at Murder by the Book. So we're super excited about the new release of her new book, Fatal Family Ties. Next up, I'm going to bring in Sherry Harris. How are you tonight, Sherry?
Good. It's great to be here. Thanks.
Nice to meet you. So Sherry's newest book is A Time to Swill, which is going to be the 2nd in her series. It is not out just yet. It comes out on July 27th. So you can definitely pre-order copies from us. It'll be out next week. So Sherry Harris is the Agatha Award nominated author of the Sarah Winston Garage Sale series and the Chloe Jackson Sea Glass Saloon Mysteries. She is a past president of Sisters in Crime and a member of the Chesapeake chapter of Sisters in Crime, the New England chapter of Sisters in Crime, Mystery Writers of America, and International Thriller Writers. In her spare time, Sherry loves reading and is a patent-holding inventor. Sherry, her husband, and guard dog Lily are living in Northern Virginia until they figure out where they want to move next. And we also are thrilled tonight to have Esme Addison joining us. How are you tonight, Esme?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's nice to meet you.
You too.
So Esme's newest release is A Hex for Danger, and it has just come out just a couple of weeks ago. It is also the second in her series. And ever since Esme Addison discovered Nancy Drew, she's wanted to solve mysteries. As a mystery author, she's finally found a way to make that dream come true. A former military spouse, Esme lives in Raleigh, North Carolina with her husband and 3 boys. When she's not writing, you can find her visiting B&Bs, breweries, wineries, and historical sites. So I see that we've got some viewers as we are chatting with all 3 authors tonight. If you guys have any questions for them about this book, I know Sherry has another series, their previous books, writing, any of that, please post those comments in the comments on Facebook or the live chat on YouTube, and we will I'll pepper those in as we are chatting. So to get us started, I'm going to start with Stephanie. Can you tell us a little bit about who your character Lucy is and a little bit about what she's gotten up to in her newest adventure?
Okay. Lucy is a professional genealogist, and in Fatal Family Ties, she is hired by her not so favorite former co-worker to investigate a disparaging magazine article about her client's former co-worker's ancestor. And it was a Civil War ancestor that claims that he was lying about his service. And then Lucy starts meeting some of her client's family, and there's a murder. There's also a theme of artwork in there. And there's a triptych painted by the ancestor that one piece is missing, and there might be something very special underneath the top painting. And it was very, very fun to write and research. I really enjoyed it.
All right. And how about you, Sherry?
So in the second book, A Time to Swill, Chloe Jackson is a big runner, and she's out running in the morning, and it's foggy and there's nobody else out. And she sees this ship, a sailboat, leaning up by one of the sandbars, and she thinks she hears a baby cry. And so she calls 911, but she doesn't want to wait. So she goes out, gets on the boat, and gets swept back out to sea on the boat, where she finds out the baby was actually a cat. But there's also a skeleton on the boat. So that's what kicks off the story.
And how about you, Esme?
So Hex for Danger is the second in the Enchanted Bay series. So we start where the main character, Alex, has moved from New York to Bellamy Bay, North Carolina. She has found out that she is descendant from the Mermaid of Warsaw, which is a real myth in Poland, and that her family is perceived as water witches in this little small coastal town. So she's getting comfortable. She's working in the herbal apothecary, and she's learning how she's kind of getting comfortable with her powers. She's got a few, she's telepathic, and she can command the water and things like that. And for the actual book itself, it's summer. There's a mermaid festival, and they're in the throes of planning. And a famous muralist comes to town to paint a mural for the festival, and she has some secrets about Alex's past, and something happens. I won't say who dies, but someone dies, and Alex has to kind of figure out what happens and also learn more about her past.
So one of the things I love about all 3 of your books is that they all have I've just gotten back from vacation, if you guys are watching, and my cats are very, very clingy. They've been out without me for a couple of days. So they have been in my lap since the minute I got home. One of the things that I love about all 3 of your books is they all have very distinct senses of place, and the place is such an important part of the story. Stephanie, with yours, Austin, Sherry, you set yours on the Emerald Coast, which is one of my favorite parts of Florida. My brother and sister-in-law have a place on Blue Mountain Beach off of 30A. So the entire time I was reading it, it just really made me want to go. And I just found out that they are not renting it out as often. So we've been told that we can come borrow it anytime we want. So I'm super excited to get back. And Esme, with yours, with Bellamy Bay. So can you guys each talk a little bit about kind of how you decided where you wanted to set the books and kind of how you capture that sense of place so well? Let's go backwards this time and start with Esme.
So Bellamy Bay is a fictional town on the coast of North Carolina. It's kind of between Wilmington and Jacksonville, which is a Marine Corps town, which is where actually I've lived in that area. And it's just so North Carolina beaches are really beautiful, and there some areas are undeveloped, so it's just like natural splendor and kind of like very beachy vibes. It's not a lot of like hotels and resorts and things like that. So it's just the kind of vibe that I really like, and I always wanted to set a story there. So I created this charming little town, which is like the beach town of my dreams, and it just has like all of the bookshops and coffee shops and all the cute like cozy things. And but it's a real part. Sorry, I've got a German Shepherd puppy. But the town plays a big part in the book, because these women they have to be by water, so they're descended from mermaids, and so they kind of get their power from the ocean, and so the beach and the sand and the sun plays a real strong character in the story.
And how about you, Sherry?
So my editor and I had been kicking ideas around for a new series, and we couldn't settle on anything. And he suggested doing something in Key West. And I'd never been there, but I was going a few days later for the first time. But also, I'm a big fan of Lucy Burdett and know her, and her series is set there. And she does just such a wonderful job that I knew I couldn't do that. And so I suggested doing it in the Destin area, because my parents moved down there in the early 90s. And my husband was in the Air Force, so I'm a military spouse too, or was. And we were stationed down there for 3 years. And it's such a unique part of Florida. First of all, the sand is the most beautiful, I think, any place in the world. And the water is such a stunning color. But it's also very Southern and has an interesting history. Some of it not so great, but it just was a fun place to set the book. And so, John, do you know where the 30A takes that sharp, it comes down and then it takes a sharp turn to the east towards Blue Mountain?
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I picture Emerald Cove being, is that sharp turn. So.
Yeah. How about you, Stephanie?
Well, mine are set in Austin, so I wish they were set in the beach, because I love the beach. But Austin is, if you've ever been there, it's sort of like a small town inside of a big town. It's very unique. There's really interesting people. Austin is just eclectic and kitschy and just it's like I said, it's very, very much of a small town inside of a big town. And there's so much going on there. There's also great genealogy repositories and archives and whatnot, which is perfect for Lucy. And so it was just a perfect place to put her for, somewhere that's interesting and fun in Texas and still has enough of a small town vibe.
So, Stephanie, since yours deal with genealogy, a lot of your the mysteries they have, as you mentioned, they have a past element and they have a present element too. So when you're writing, are you working on both of those storylines at the same time, or are you working on one and then you kind of fill in the other one?
I have both. I know what I want to happen in the past, and then I work in that. And I'm a pantser. And so I sort of figure out as I go along as who's going to die and whatnot. And in this one, I have 3 branches of a family, and there was sort of an unintentional theme of threes that kind of ended up in my book and whatnot. And so I did, I started off with the mystery that I have in the past with the Civil War ancestor and his service being questioned, and why that happened, and then it evolves into the family mystery. And so they kind of mingle together after a while and everything. But I do start with the past mystery first, or at least I did with this one.
And Sherry, I love that your character is, she's still a librarian at heart, even though she's found herself in Florida and she's working in a bar. Can you talk a little bit about why you wanted to make her a librarian, and how did you decide to which authors you were going to name drop through it? Because you mentioned like so many of my favorites.
I don't know why I decided. I guess I'm fascinated by librarians. I think I always would have loved to have been one, to be around all those books, and lots of friends that are librarians, and they're smart and resourceful, and it kind of fit with the dynamic I wanted Chloe to have. And so I think she uses all of those things, as she's going through that. And as far as the books go, some of them are books that I loved, or books that I read to my daughter, or books that I'll see somebody mention. And another thing I'll do is, like, one day I wanted a book with somebody that had a cape. And so, I Googled children's book with capes and found some things that way. So I also, Sherry Randall, who's also writes as Mary Allen, was a children's librarian, and we're good friends. So I always joke that I have this thing when I can't figure out what the librarian would do, that I say, what would Sherry do? And I shoot her off an email to find out.
Yeah, her new one, A Rocky Road to Ruin, maybe slightly spoilery, but if you guys are enrolled in the Cozy of the Month subscription box, that's the July pick, and those in theory those went out while I was on vacation. So I hope you guys, if you haven't checked out A Rocky Road to Ruin that she's running under Mary Allen, it's great. But yeah, I loved when I started A Time to Swill, like as soon as the character was like, oh, it's just like the first line in the Julia Spencer Fleming book, and like quoted, I was like, oh, I'm so in for this. I was so excited to see that.
Oh, yes. And that's the other thing with the adult authors, I usually try to find books written by women. To if Chloe's reading a book, I try to pick a woman writer. And nothing against men writers. I read lots of men, but just want to lift people up as much as I can.
And so, Esme, in your series, especially this new one, there's such a wonderful sense of mythology, as you mentioned, kind of with the Mermaid of Warsaw. Can you talk a little bit about kind of how you learned about that, and why you decided that that's kind of what you wanted to build the mythology of your world around?
Right. So initially, all I knew was that I wanted to do something about like a Polish family, kind of inspired by my in-laws. And I love history, which is one of the reasons why I love Essie's, Stephanie's books. It's like I love everything anything that I write or have yet to write always has some sort of historical component. So I knew I wanted there to be some sort of historical backstory to it. I just wasn't sure what, and I didn't even think it was going to be paranormal. I actually thought I was going to do like a Polish bakery, because I just wanted to get those baked goods in there, which I still do. But I just kind of started researching history, Polish culture. And I stumbled upon this myth of a mermaid. I had never heard of it. And I was just like, I have to do this. This has to be, how can I not do something about a mermaid? Of course, editors were like, a mermaid cozy? No, that's not a thing. So, I just, they were like, make them witches, make it work, make it more witchy. So I made it, where they're perceived to be water witches by the community, because they don't really know that they're mermaids. But yeah, I have done a lot of research. I mean, I've read everything that I can find about that particular myth, and I have researched. My research, it's fantasy, but I go kind of into sci-fi with my research to figure out like where would this person have? Where would a mermaid have come from? Like how could that have really happened? Like scientifically, or if a person that actually had mermaid DNA, how would that present itself? So I do a lot of research, and then I kind of put that into the story. So there's a lot of interesting stuff in there, and I try to make it as real as possible so that this kind of fantastical world that I've built seems kind of based in reality.
Yeah, and it definitely feels like that. I think you do a really great job of kind of balancing kind of the different powers and stuff that the family has, and especially with them having kind of owning an herb shop. I think you kind of leave it in a way that if people wanted to read it as, you know, maybe it is paranormal, maybe it's not. I thought you have a really good balance there between the two.
Yeah, thank you.
So since Esme mentioned research, Sherry and Stephanie, let's start with Stephanie. Do you want to talk a little bit about kind of what other research you have to do as you're working, whether it's, you know, digging into genealogy or even kind of like how an amateur sleuth would solve a crime? Let's start with Stephanie.
Well, so this one I have, you know, the genealogy of the Civil War. So, and it's not really about the Civil War, but about researching your Civil War ancestors' military service records. And the Civil War, their record keeping was fairly shoddy, and there was just it's very hard to prove that your ancestor really was at that battle on that day at that time. With all the things that go on, and so I had to do a lot of research into that, and I found some, you know, fascinating information, such as they only took a roll call once every 2 months. And so sometimes you might find your ancestor being listed as present, and then the next time you'll find him listed as AWOL or deserted, and then the next time he's back in, you know, back there again. And it was because sometimes they were injured or lost. They were just left behind by their regiment, and they had to catch up. So they were listed as deserted briefly, and then they were, you know, so it's very much a puzzle in and of itself. And that was really fascinating. And then I had an art sub theme, which I really loved researching. And I interviewed 3 art experts, and just got a lot of information about that. And that was a lot of fun to dig into, because I've got an inner art geek. And so it was really fun to dig into. I liked it a lot.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
So I already talked to Stephanie offline, but I really loved the kind of historical Civil War angle. In our family, we discovered my great-great-grandfather was in the Civil War. And so we've actually gone through this whole thing of like researching where he was and what he was doing. And so it's fun to read that in her story. It kind of mirrors the experience that we've had in our family trying to figure out what he was doing and where he was and stuff. So I really love that about her story.
And tell them about how your son played on the same soccer field as the battlefield where your ancestor fought. Is that right?
That's right.
That just
yeah.
made me
Yeah.
absolutely
So we found out that so he was a man of color, and he was a manservant to the person that he was enslaved to. And he was at the Battle of Chancellorsville, which is in Fredericksburg, Virginia. My husband was at Quantico, and we lived there. And my son, there's a school, there's like an elementary school and a soccer field. And I don't know, it makes me like, no, but my son played at the soccer field, and the battlefield is like right there. And it's just like, how crazy is that? That I actually was near where my great-great-grandfather was. So.
Wow.
That is amazing. Absolutely. It gives me chills just thinking about it. Cool.
Yep.
And how about you, Sherry? What kind of research goes into yours?
Well, it's been really rough because I've gone to a bunch of beach bars to try to figure out what Chloe's bar should look like. Yeah. And it's really been interesting because I know this sounds kind of, I don't know, silly or something, but I've done a lot of research about different kinds of drinks and their history. And in A Time to Swill, one of them is a daiquiri, and they say it was invented in Cuba when somebody was having a party, an engineer, and they ran out of what was it, gin, and put in rum, and thus the daiquiri. But the history of it even really goes back farther to the 1700s and seafarers, and they made these drinks and put lime juice in them so they wouldn't get scurvy. And
wow.
Yeah, I think that's all really
interesting.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but
It's fun research, right?
it is kind of fun research, trying to make a daiquiri and go, oh, this one's better than this one.
And it's legitimate research. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you write it off there, Terry.
I'm going to add a brewery to my next book.
I do that all after I've written, not before.
So then do you just kind of leave a placeholder while you're working on it? You're like, insert history of drink here and then just kind of keep going?
Yeah, or sometimes like at night, I'll be reading about, different kinds of drinks and doing the research to try to figure out just what to use. And I think the thing with daiquiris too is, a classic daiquiri is 3 ingredients: rum, sugar, or syrup, sugar syrup, and lime juice. It's not those things we think about with the slushies and fruit and everything.
And so, Esme, in Hex for Danger, you also deal with kind of science versus magic. So what kind of research did you do into kind of the science end of it?
Right. Okay, so kind of like what I was saying earlier, I researched like fish to see like what kind of powers, not superpowers, but things that they have. Like, I didn't know that fish have a very keen sense of smell. Like, why would they in the water? But so I gave that to the characters. They're, the women the women that have the mermaid DNA can, emit electricity or like a force field from their hands. Fish can do that. Electric eels. So it's everything every power that I gave them, fish have it. You know what I mean? Or some sort of sea creature. And so I researched a lot of sea creatures, and I just looked up. I talk a lot about herbs. So, I have always used herbal remedies in my family. So I researched that for things, to even find things that I don't know. So I researched that, and even. Like I go into like mythological weapons, which I find. So I have worked with military technology. Sherry made with the Navy Yard for a while ago. So I got really interested in military technology, and so I deal with mythological weapons. And so I researched. I read a lot of the different myths, and I saw a lot of correlations between weaponry that we have now and things that are described. There are ways that they could be created now, which sounds crazy. If something has like a laser comes out of it, but it was like this, say a mystical axe or whatever, that's something you can create now. So a lot of the mythological weapons can be recreated in a scientific way. So I kind of explore that. So it was really fun to do that kind of stuff. But I do that kind of stuff even when I'm not writing. So that I had to have a reason to like put it, a reason for it. So now I kind of put all that kind of stuff into my stories.
Yeah. I always love hearing kind of how those like kind of seemingly random things that like you come across that just kind of spark these ideas. And then before you know it, like there's a book. It's always really great to see how like all of those little pieces come together.
That's actually that brought on a scene in the Hex for Danger. I was going through all these different, there's actually on Wikipedia, like a entry for like list of magical weapons, and it gives you every single one. And I just clicked on it and started reading them. And there's like real accounts of like what these weapons did. And it's horrible and horrifying. Like, and so I put this in the story. I don't know if any of you have actually, have had a chance to look at it, but it's weird, like the accounts, and so I just like, well, what if these things weren't myths? What if these are actually real and we just believe that they're myths? So that's kind of how I took a look at it.
Yeah. So it's
sorry, I wanted to be there.
I love the herb stuff too.
Mm-hmm. Yep, me too.
So it's a fairly standard kind of trope in the cozy genre that usually, our heroine is a young woman who she kind of finds herself as a kind of fish out of water in a situation, whether it's she's left her big job somewhere and she's come back home to her small town, or she's fled to go somewhere else. And so Esme and Sherry, you guys both do that, except Stephanie, you don't, because Lucy is, she has a life in Austin. That's kind of where she lives. So let's talk a little bit about kind of why you guys think that's such a trope and why you decided to have your characters kind of being, for Esme and Sherry, kind of in a new kind of environment. And then let's start with Stephanie, actually. Stephanie, so why did you decide to have your character kind of already in a hometown, kind of knowing the lay of the land?
Well, first of all, because I wanted her to be somewhere where she, had access to all her genealogy needs and whatnot. But also, she also already is sort of a detective in a way. That's why I call them the Ancestry Detective Mysteries, because she hunts down dead people all the time. And so she just hasn't done it for someone in the present. And so that's why I thought it would make for a great a mystery that, that this genealogist suddenly had to solve a mystery in the present as well as in the past. And it's been so fun to bring her into that, and then, try to get her to, to work with with the police and whatnot, and her FBI agent boyfriend and whatnot, and learn how to investigate as she goes along. So in this book, she's really trying to hone her investigative skills and whatnot, and she has a lot of fun doing it. Messes up a lot, which was fun to write.
Do you think at some point you'll have her leave Austin and explore somewhere else?
Well, she does come to Houston briefly in this book, and she goes by Murder by the Book, FYI. And and she goes into the museum district and whatnot, and I had a great time bringing in that, but I'm hoping that eventually, if I'm lucky enough to be able to write more Lucy, that she'll go to other places. I was always inspired by Reese Bowen's Lady Georgie books, where she goes to so many different places. Right. And because she's a genealogist, I mean, there's so many places where she can go. I mean, she needs to go visit all these different places in Washington, D.C. and every place. And so hopefully, fingers crossed, if I do get a new one, she'll actually be going down to the beach, hopefully. We'll see. We'll see if that's what they like. But that's why there's got a great story. So hopefully it'll happen.
And how about you, Sherry?
So I kind of like that whole fish out of water kind of thing, so to speak, Esme. But I tried to change it up a little. And so when I set up the series, Chloe promises her best friend Boone, if anything happens to him while he's in Afghanistan, he's in the National Guard, that she'll go down and help his grandmother with this beach bar. And of course, she never thinks anything will happen, but he dies. And so she goes down there, and she meets the grandmother, who's not this little old lady, but this really, fit, dresses beautifully woman that doesn't really want her there, and has to worm her way into a job there by lying to her. And so even though it is going from one place to the other, I kind of tried to give it a twist instead of going back to the family business.
And how about you, Esme? Although I guess, Esme, in your case, technically your character is, a fish who's coming to the water.
Right. Yeah. So I really, I like the cozy mystery genre for all of the hallmarks, no pun intended, that it has. And so I really wanted to write something that was very cozy, and so I like the fact, because I have this mythological world, I wanted to introduce it to the reader through the eyes of somebody who was new, so that they could uncover it as she was, have questions answered as she was. I thought that was just like the easiest way to do it. But I also wanted to kind of show, an option is to, have this world and everyone's like, yeah, we are magical and we have powers. I wanted someone to be like, that's weird. Why do you do this? Just ask all those questions that the reader would ask. I like having her new to the area and to the family and kind of finding her way.
And I think you do such a great job of that. I think it can be hard sometimes for authors when they're doing, especially a paranormal world where like the character doesn't know the rules and you're kind of learning it as the character does. And I think I thought you did a really great job of kind of introducing it to the readers, so that way, yeah, they were learning about it as she did, but you also didn't feel like you didn't know what was going on or there was more happening. I thought that was a good balance there too.
Thank you.
So, since you mentioned kind of loving all of the hallmarks of cozies, so what drew you guys to wanting to write cozies? Did you read them before, or when I was talking to Ellen Byron about her plantation series, she had mentioned like when she started writing them, like she didn't know what cozies were, and finally one of her agents said, "Did you know that you're writing a cozy?" So, what drew you to cozies? Let's start with Esme.
So I love cozies. Like I was a reader before I started writing them, and it took me a long time to discover them. Like I would walk by that section in Barnes and Noble with all the bright colors, and there's like dogs and weird titles, and I was like, "What is that? What is that?" Like go to the other section, and then I went to Napa like a couple of years ago, and I came back and I wanted to read books about wine, and so I found Ellen Crosby's Wine Country Mystery Series. And that's how I kind of discovered, there's this thing where it's a mystery and there's like a hook, there's a theme. And you can, if you want to read about cupcakes, you can find a mystery with cupcakes. You want to read about glass blowing, you can find a mystery about that. So I love that. I love like learning things. And so I could find something set in North Carolina or Virginia, wherever I want to go. So I like that aspect of it. And then I also like, I like cozy stuff, like the crabs, and it's clean, and like for me the murder is the least important part. Like I don't even care about, you know what I mean? Like in my stories there's a lot of other stuff going on. Like I'm not big on gore and violence. But you can't have this perfect idyllic town with nothing. Like something has to happen. So it's a murder, but it's solved. And so I just love all of that, and I always knew I wanted to write, like try my hand at one. I think the second one that really kind of impacted me was Ellery Adams' Books by the Bay. But I was like, this is in North Carolina. It's on the beach. And I was like, I love this. I want to do something. So I want to try my hand at this. So.
Yeah, I love that. I think too, also, when I'm reading them, like you said, yes, the murder is important because it's the thing that kind of keeps the plot driving along, but it always becomes almost incidental because you get to know these characters and you get to know this town, and those are really the things that you keep coming back for to kind of see what these characters are up to, more so than like who done it.
Right.
How about you, Sherry?
So I grew up reading mysteries and romantic suspense and thrillers. Our house was my parents both loved to read them, and so that's what our house was full of. And the first book I started writing was about a gemologist in Seattle, and I've never sold that book. I pitched it to the agent that's now my agent, and he was like, "Yeah, not interested. It's not cozy enough, And a couple weeks later, another friend of mine, Barbara Ross, said, "Hey, my agent, there's an editor at Kensington, and my agent is talking to him about a garage sale series. Would you be interested?" And I thought, well, let me think about it. The next morning I was like, yes. And I love garage sales. I love going to them. And so it just was a very natural thing to do. And I hadn't read a ton of cozies at that point. But like I said, a long history of mysteries and thrillers. And so I embraced it like Esme did.
Yeah. I always love hearing about how series start because, an editor or an agent is looking for a specific hook. And it always seems like you said, you love garage sales. It always seems like kind of the right author who's interested in that, just kind of like how it's, I don't know, some unseen force that seems to like meet the two up. It's always really interesting to hear that happen.
I know my friend was like, just watch a show on HGTV or something. I'm like, I don't need to do that. I have lots of experience.
Yeah.
Right.
And how about you, Stephanie?
Well, it's basically exactly what they said. It's same deal. And I would see them, and I didn't really know what they were. And then I started picking one up. I think Sarah Winston was one of my first. I had like a bunch that were sort of my first, and Kate Carlisle's Bibliophile series, and Reese Bowen and whatnot. And I just loved them. And I loved that there was a little bit of humor and some romance, because I'm a big romantic at heart. And I loved that there was often witty banter, and then you learn something. And like Esme said, same deal. I absolutely love learning things in my books. And with mine, how it started was I was at the Writers League of Texas, which is a conference in Austin, and I went to a panel where they were talking about characters having interesting professions. And I was sitting there thinking, wow, a genealogist would be great, because I would literally go to my grandmother's house, and she was a huge genealogist, and every single time there was somebody new, oh, you're related to Humphrey Bogart. Oh, you go back to Charlemagne. Oh, all this stuff, and everything in between. And it was so much fun. And I just thought, wow, this would be so much fun. And Kate Carlisle's Bibliophile series was sort of another reason why I set mine in Austin, because she sets hers in San Francisco. And I thought, and she still manages to make them light and funny and cozy and whatnot. Although she's another one, she didn't realize that she was writing a cozy until her editor told her. So I thought, all right, if another big city can work, then I think Austin can work too. So it all worked out. But yeah, I love cozies. They just make me smile and make me feel so good, and they're fun to write too. They're so much fun.
And it's so great, we've talked about a couple of the tropes, like the small town, or, the heroine coming back to her small town, things like the hook. But it's so great that there are so many ingredients, and there are so many different ways that people can interpret them. So while there are kind of loose guidelines for the genre, there are so many ways that you can take that and twist it and play with it. And it's been really great to see kind of more people, especially throughout the pandemic, more people, and specifically more younger people, kind of discover the genre and fall in love with them too. So when I was reading everybody's bios, most of you guys mentioned being part of either Sisters in Crime or some other writers organization. So let's talk a little bit about that. What for any aspiring writers out there that might be curious about kind of joining one of those groups, what do you think are some of the benefits, and how has it helped you to be part of them? Let's start with Stephanie.
Mystery Writers of America and Sisters in Crime are two just absolutely wonderful ones. And then all the conferences like VoucherCon and Malice Domestic, especially for cozy mystery writers, and then local ones like Writers League of Texas here in Texas. And they're just amazing. But, Sisters in Crime, oh my goodness. And Sherry, you're a past president and everything, so she could talk 10 times more about it than I can. But they offer so many things, webinars and support to writers, and they're just fantastic. And if I hadn't learned about those and learned about conferences, I don't know that I would have met as many authors as I did and fell into it the way that I did, and and learned about my the Malice Domestic Best First Traditional Mystery contest and whatnot. And so it's amazing. And in fact, speaking of Sisters in Crime, Houston has a brand new chapter. And so we're Houston Sisters in Crime. Yay. And so I'm the communications director or person for a little while longer and whatnot. But so that's been really wonderful. And they're great things to be involved with.
Yeah, and I mentioned our Houston chapter right now. They are meeting virtually, but we are trying to figure out when we can actually have them in store again. So if you keep an eye out on the Murder by the Book calendar, you'll be able to find info about how you can join their virtual events. And at some point, once with the store, at the moment, we're not open on Sundays yet, so we're trying to figure out some staffing stuff. But as soon as we're open on Sundays again, we're excited to be able to welcome them back in the store, because I think they were only able to host like 1 or 2 meetings with us before we had to close stuff down from the pandemic. So I'm going to drop the link to their previous meeting was this past Sunday, and we'll have the August info up pretty soon. So how about you, Sherry? Anything to add?
I think the most important thing to me about being a member of an organization like Sisters in Crime is the networking. In 2005, I was at the Malice Domestic banquet, and sat at this table with this woman, and we were moving to Boston that summer. And she happened to be from the Boston area. Her name's Julia Henricus, and she's now the executive director of Sisters in Crime. And she's like, oh, do you know about Sisters in Crime? You need to join. The New England chapter is great. And really so when we moved, I joined, and I just met so many wonderful people. And that really is how I got my book deal. You know, I have stacks of rejection letters from the gemology series. And you know, but I kept studying the craft and going to conferences, and I mean, that's really the dynamic to me, is getting to know other people that can give a hand up, and then being able to give a hand up to someone else.
And how about you, Esme? Are you a member of any of the groups?
Yeah, so I'm a member of Sisters in Crime, and so I'm in the Raleigh area. We've got a Raleigh-Durham Triangle chapter. You know, it's not very active now because of COVID, but before we would have meetings and things like that. So that's beneficial. I'm a member of Crime Writers of Color. That's a great group. Lots of support there, and just like great networking, and just making really good friendships and sharing information about the industry. As we go forward, I think there will be more opportunities for things, you know, in the real world, like conferences and things like that. We've got an event coming up at BoucherCon, which I'm excited about. Actually get to see people in person. I'm a member of International Thriller Writers, and that one, like going to Thriller Fest, is like, it's a huge conference in New York, and you know, it's not like super cozy, you know, but there's so many great conferences, and you're just learning about the craft, and you're networking, and you're meeting people. I think those are all really great. And also, if you happen to be in North Carolina, there's the North Carolina Network of Writers as a group that's very. They do a lot. They have at least two conferences a year, and do a lot with just helping people learn the business of writing and things like that.
So for anybody watching, I just dropped links. Like I said, I dropped a link to the Houston Sisters in Crime event that just happened at Murder by the Book. I also dropped a link to Sisters in Crime National. So if you're not sure about where a local chapter is, you can search there. And I also just dropped a link for Crime Writers of Color too. So you should definitely check all of those organizations out. I think also on the Murder by the Book website, we've got a links page that lists a lot of the organizations as well. All right. So, what is something that you guys have read lately that you loved? And you're not allowed to say each other's books because we know that we're all fans of each other. So that's my one general disclaimer. Let's start with Stephanie.
Well, let's see. I've been over here. I loved Angeline Woolley's The Firekeeper's Daughter, and then Kate Carlisle's latest Little Black Book, and then I'm about to start reading Stephanie Graves's, this is an arc of her latest Olive Bright Pigeoneer. And I'm sorry, if y'all are hearing a whooshing noise, I think that's my computer. The fan has started blowing, so I'm sorry about that. But yeah, I've read some really, really great stuff. And I have another one over there that I'm forgetting, but there's been some phenomenal books. And I was lucky enough to get to be an Edgar's judge for Best First Novel, and so I had the honor of reading a bazillion amazing novels, and they were so good. So it was just incredible. Winter Counts, wonderful. They were all wonderful. Dead Marches, Murder in Old Bombay, so many good ones.
We so for anybody who is watching, if you guys have not checked out our YouTube channel, we have we were able to do a panel with the Best Novel nominee Edgar nominees last year, and it was super exciting. We were kind of hoping to be able to do one with the people that were on the panels to pick, but they have to sign NDA, so they weren't allowed to talk about kind of not the judging process or any of that stuff. So you can definitely check that out. We also chatted with, Stephanie mentioned Kate Carlisle. We chatted with her and Ellie Alexander a couple of weeks ago. So all of that stuff is up on the YouTube channel. How about you, Sherry? What's something that you've read lately that you loved?
Well, I I just started this book by Jeffrey Deaver that I'm so embarrassed I can't think of the name of, and it's in my bedroom. But I started writing a thriller, and it's kind of an action thriller, but it's an amateur person instead of somebody, you know, with all these mad skills. And so my agent said I had to find comparables, and I found this book by Jeffrey Deaver. And the guy grew up as a survivalist, and it's very interesting. I'm not very far into it, but it's really unusual. And I also actually just reread the first book in Janet Ivanovich's Stephanie Plum series, because she does such a great job of creating this community and using humor, and I just think she does a really wonderful job with that, especially in her early books, that I kind of like to use that as an example of what I should be doing. So
Those books are so great.
they are.
So funny.
I think a lot of cozy mystery authors are going to kind of pivot to suspense. You know what I mean? Like, it's very popular, and it's not that different. You know, it's just like, so I feel like there should be like a cozy thriller. Should be like a new genre that we could do. I have an idea for one, but it's cozy, but it's a standalone and it's a thriller. But you know, it would like it's not like dark and edgy enough for like, you know, the people that are looking for like PJ Vernon. You know what I mean? It's not going to be like that. But
Right.
I don't know.
I always use in my head anyway that movie Enemy of the State with Will Smith and Gene Hackman, because Will Smith was this guy that just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and you know, got the little disc dropped in his pocket, and so it set him up on this adventure.
Yeah, Paige Shelton has sort of started that kind of cozy thriller thing with this new Alaska series that she started. The first one is called Thin Ice, and they're definitely thriller paced, and you know, as they progress, they get a little bit more thrillery, and she'll drop an F-bomb here or there in them, but they're still very like, they're not cozy, but they definitely kind of walk that line. So I'm so in for like the cozy thriller being a subgenre. So yes, if you guys are working on them, keep going for it. So how about you, Esme? What's something that you've read lately that you've loved?
So I just read B.A. Paris's The Therapist, which is really great. I love her books. And I read that one last week. I finally read Laura Dave's The Last Thing He Told Me. Just finished that one. I still kind of doing like, you know, female-driven psychological suspense. Yeah. And then I read Lucy Foley's The Guest List. Oh. I read all these books, and like I try not to. When the book gets like massive, it makes me not want to read it until like the brouhaha dies down. You know what I mean? It's like, who picked this for a book club? I'm not reading that one, not yet. You know, it's horrible because I know it's going to be good. And it just stays on my Goodreads list for my Audible list forever. So I'm now kind of getting around to these really big books, and they're great. I like it. Those are really great books.
So we're super excited. Speaking of B.A. Paris, we're going to be we're partnering with Novel Suspects, and we're going to be doing an event. It's Women in Crime Fiction, and it's going to be Mary Kubica, Kelly Garrett, B.A. Paris, and Abby Collette. And that is going to be on, let me find the date, Tuesday, August 3rd at 6 Central. And that'll be broadcast on the Novel Suspects Facebook and YouTube channel. So you guys should definitely check that out. I'm super excited to hear Kelly Garrett talk about her. What's that?
That's a great panel.
Yeah, I'm super excited to hear Kelly Garrett talk about her upcoming book, Like a Sister. So I'm definitely going to be tuning in to that. So we're getting towards the end of our time, but I know you guys either have all just had literally something come out like days ago or coming out in a couple of days, but everybody always wants to know, what are you working on or what do you have coming out next? Let's start with Esme. Okay,
so my book came out last Tuesday. And I'm working on the third book in that series. And then I'm also working on, I just finished the first draft of another mystery. So that was in edits. So, and then I have a standalone that's like on the back burner that I work on when I'm not doing other stuff. So we'll see.
And how about you, Sherry?
So like we said, A Time to Swill comes out next Tuesday. And then 3 Shots to the Wind comes out in March. And then I'm writing the 4th in the Chloe books right now, plus this thriller. But as Esme said, it takes me backstage to the things I need to write. So.
And how about you, Stephanie?
This came out. Fatal Family Ties came out on Tuesday, and then we'll have to see if more is to come. And I've got my fingers crossed. And but I am working on thanks. I'm working on something else for my editor, and sort of under wraps right now, and we'll see if that takes. And I'm very excited about it. And so I've got my fingers crossed in a couple of different places, and we'll see. Yeah.
So that means, for everybody watching, that means that you need to go out and buy Fatal Family Ties so we get more Lucy Lancaster. And as I mentioned, if you have not bought your copies yet, Stephanie is dropping by Murder by the Book on Saturday to sign for us. So if you want your books personalized, you can order those on the store's website. Just mention in the comments how you want the books personalized. If you were not local to Houston, we ship all over the country. The moment we are offering free media mail shipping on orders over $75. So if you want to pick up, which you do want to pick up, Esme's book and Sherry's book too, we can wrap them all up in a nice big package and send them all to you. So to recap for anybody who might have joined us late, we have been chatting, as you mentioned, with Sherry Harris, whose book A Time to Swell comes out next Tuesday. Esme Perkins, whose book Fatal Family Ties has just come out Tuesday. And and A Hex for Danger by Esme Addison, which came out previous Tuesday. So all either recent or upcoming releases. If you missed any part of our chat, you can rewatch it on Facebook and YouTube once we're done. And if you were on the YouTube channel, I hope you'll poke around. We've done hundreds of these virtual events since the pandemic started. I actually have a specific playlist for all of the cozy events, as well as some of the in-store staff recommendation videos that we were doing. So there's a specific playlist. So if you want to see any of those that we have been chatting with, you can do that. As I mentioned when we got started, we have a lot of really great cozy stuff coming up too. So just to kind of hit some of those real quick, on September 4th, we will have Dean James, aka Miranda James, in store to sign with us. I will be chatting virtually with Victoria Laurie on August 31st, Hannah Dennison on August 26th, Lucy Burdett, Ellen Byron, Jennifer Chow, Deborah Goldstein, and Libby Klein on August 13th. That'll also be virtual. And I don't have the dates in front of me because they're not on the website just yet. We confirmed them just before I went on vacation. But in December, I'll be chatting with Amanda Flower and V.M. Burns. And then in November, to kind of kick off the holiday season, we'll be chatting with Lucy Innes, Darcy Hannah, and Maria DeRico, a.k.a. Ellen Byron, about their newest Christmas releases early in November. So lots of great stuff coming up. Esme, Stephanie, and Sherry, it has been so wonderful chatting with you guys this evening. Thank you so much for making time to chat cozies with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, and it's been a lot of fun talking to all of you.
It has been.
Thank you so much.
So everybody out there, take care, and we will see you soon. Thanks so much.
Thanks. Goodbye. Thanks.